Bonjour, hello, and welcome to this episode of Pardon Your French podcast, sponsored by Coppercock Distillery. I'm Vanessa Shernock. I'm Stephanie Lauren, and we're here today with
Andy Davies, bonjour.
We like to call him DJ Andy Davies.
Yeah.
Well, how did you and Vanessa meet?
We've swim in the same circle. I watched him play football, you know.
That's a joy to watch.
So what took you to France?
Well, it was via Spain. I often say to people I'm on the run.
From the BBC. He will be after this episode.
It was a weird one. There's a band called the Blow Monkeys who were around in the 80s, and they're still going. And I don't know how I met him, but there's a guy called, the lead singer of the Blow Monkeys is a guy called Dr. Robert. And that's not his real name, but he went under the name Dr. Robert. And he said, we got a house in Spain that we're selling. And I said, I quite fancied moving abroad. And I said to Abs, look, I'm going to go and look at this house. So I flew into Granada. They picked me up at the airport. I looked at this house, spent the day with them, went to lunch somewhere and looked at the house again. And I made an offer and they accepted it. And I went back and Abs said, how'd you get on? And I said, I'm very into it. It's a very nice house. She said, really? I said, I've put an offer in. And we both said, all right then. So we both sold it. We both had separate houses in London. We both sold those. She had a business. She gave it up. And I was still doing the radio show. That's how I obviously met Dr. Robert, through the radio show. I was still doing the radio show. She was pregnant with Alfie, and the last day she could fly, before you're obviously not allowed to fly, she flew to Spain, to this house that had no furniture in it because it had all been collected by this guy in London who never delivered it when he said he was going to deliver it. So we had no bed. I had to stay on to do the Christmas radio show with Jonathan, and I flew out probably 4 days after her, and she was staying I think she stayed in a B&B in the village, and she gave birth to Alfie, he was born January 25th, so 2007, because he's 18.
Oh, he's 18, not 20.
2007, so January 25th, 2007, but at home, and he was the first child to be born in the village, actually at home for 15 years.
Wow.
Because everyone else obviously goes to hospital.
Yeah.
So that's how, I'll get you to France in a minute, don't worry. When we were in Spain, we were there for only 2 years. And when and everyone knows this, I think, what was known as Saxgate. I don't know if you remember this, do you?
No.
Oh, good. There was a whole period a number of years ago when Jonathan Ross appeared on Russell.
They do know Russell.
On Russell Brand.
I didn't realise that's what it was called there.
Jonathan was basically stuck his head above the parapet and was shot down, whereas Russell Brand ducked and disappeared. And basically what happened was Russell Brand had a thing with Andrew Sachs's granddaughter. Andrew Sachs was the guy who played Manuel on Fawlty Towers.
Yeah.
And it was talked about on his show, so not on my show, not on my watch at all. And then what happened was it was broadcast on Radio 2, and no one said anything. I think the only complaints were the language. And then what happened was Andrew Sachs's agent picked up on it, and you get the feeling that they were looking to try and boost Andrew Sachs's career slightly.
Yeah.
So they made a big song and dance about how wrong it was. And that's when it got blown out of all proportion. One of the producers, I think one of the producers got sacked. It was all a bit wrong and weird. And Jonathan basically sort of took the flap for it. I remember I think it was a piece in the London Evening Standard about me saying he can't control him, as if I was, and that was nothing to do with me. I wasn't even, I wasn't even there. It was a separate show, but they made it implied that it happened on our Saturday morning show. It wasn't. So basically, he got suspended. Jonathan, I was being paid because I was with him, so I wasn't working. So I was in Spain for 3 months, and then when went to go back on again, Jonathan had done the Friday night TV show and had apologised for what had gone on. And then, so he's then doing Saturday morning with me. Jonathan used to always arrive. We were on from 10 to 1. He wouldn't arrive until 10 to 10. I mean, literally 10 minutes to go. I'd been there for probably since 9. And as he came in, his agent, Addison, came up and said, "Oh, we've had a call from the controller of the BBC. He wants you to apologise." And I remember John saying, "I've had enough of this. I've already done it once last night. I don't want to do it again. You've got to do it. You've got to do it." And I said, "Look, let me lead this." I said, I'll say I saw the programme last night, thought you handled it brilliantly, but I'll hit a record. We're done." That's exactly what happened. I played a record. He then said to me, "So what you've been doing whilst we've not been on?" Now, for artistic license, you don't go, "Well, I've been sitting on my backside doing nothing," because that just, sounds a bit dull, doesn't it? And I said, "Well, actually," and this was true. I said, "I've been building a wall to store my wood. And at the side of the house, I just built this sort of, literally some sort of sheltery thing to stack your wood in. Terribly badly made by me." And again, it's artistic license. We did nothing wrong. He said, "Oh, I can imagine you with your once proud chest stripped to the waist." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "I've even got one of those leather tool belts." And he said, "Oh," and I said, "The weird thing is, though, there's this woman who keeps trying to kiss me." And there was a woman who used to wander around the village, who sadly had Alzheimer's, who used to chase young men and try and kiss them. And he said, and again, nothing wrong with this, but obviously it's near the knuckle.
Yeah.
He said, "Why don't you give her one last night before the grave?" And we go into sort of a bit more about that. No, but it's not, there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
right
no.
But it's on the knuckle.
Yeah.
But it's Saturday morning.
Yeah, but that's what he used to do. And,
Yeah.
But what Jonathan was brilliant at was he knew the parameters where he could get to without...
Take it
breaking
far
up.
enough, but not over the end.
And we finished the show, and there's... but for the whole show, we got BBC executives looking through the glass. And they all come and go, "Yeah, great show, great show." And I used to have a flat near Radio 2. I used to take a bag, dump the stuff in the flat, grab a bag for the flight, Stansted, Granada. Used to land about 8 or something. And I remember putting my phone on, and there was 4 messages. I thought, this is a bit odd. And I said, the first one was, "Somebody from the BBC, can you call me?" Somebody from the Sun newspaper, Jonathan's manager, and Abigail ringing in tears. So I rang her first. I could make a joke here and say I rang the BBC first. I didn't. I rang her first. And I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Well, the phone rang and it said number privado, as in private number. And my dad's number was the only one that ever used to come up as that." So she answered the phone. A guy on the other end of the phone mumbled something about the Sun newspaper and said, "Did you listen to the show today?" And she said, "Yeah." And he said, "What do you think?" She said, "I thought it was really funny." And he said, and this is the actual words, "What do you think about the fact that your husband wants to fuck an 80-year-old? And she said, "Well, it's not what he said." So then she said, "Well, this is all off the record," but she said, I think the woman he's talking about has got Alzheimer's." And that was it. It was like, literally, he put the phone down. News of the World next morning, Jonathan Ross in old woman sex scandal. No word of a lie, something like that.
Yeah.
And we then had a guy paid for by the Sun who drove from Marbella. So there's probably 3 hours, if not more, to this small little village in Spain. And I'd never mentioned on the show, I never mentioned the woman's name. I never mentioned the village. So I broke no broadcasting rules whatsoever. But they basically went round the village offering people holidays, money, whatever they could do. They found the woman, took pictures of her. They then, there was a guy in the village who was known as a notorious, in the day, had been a bank robber, who lived in the village, but he got caught because he went and robbed a bank and didn't wear a mask, and everybody recognised him. He was a bit of an idiot. And he was sending people to our house. It then made Spanish newspapers. I think in the translation was "Man builds wall to keep woman out." It then made the Spanish television And we had cameras. We had to take the kids to school in balaclavas because they were up above. Our house had a hill above it, and they were standing there taking pictures of us. Yeah, under that, how I got to France.
Yeah. So then I had to leave the village.
Well, it wasn't. It was a bit like, and I was, and then there was a guy, an English guy we knew, who was very friendly with all the people in the village. And the village was very small. It had 300 people, a lot of older people in it, and everyone knew everyone. And a lot of the families were the same, families. And there was a woman who ran a bar who they basically were saying, "You have to resign." And I said, "I'm not resigning." And I said, "I've done nothing wrong." Well, they're camp, it's disgraceful. And I said, "I've done nothing wrong. It's nothing to do with me whatsoever." And in the end, it just carried on. And Abigail was buying flowers. People took, and she used to obviously walk, whenever this woman came to our house, she would walk her home. Spoke to the son, and they sort of hassled him about stuff, offered him money, and he turned it down. And then in the end, I just rang this guy and said, "Look, tell him I've resigned," because I said, "This drives me nuts." And he did that, and it sort of calmed down. Well, I think I was looking at, like you do, when you're still sort of unsure where you should be. I was looking at the internet, looking at houses, and I saw this house in Bonn, and I said to Abs, "I really like the look of this house," because you've been there. Well, we used to live there, so it had a sort of Gothic front to it. It's quite an amazing looking place, and I remember covering the price up. And I said to Abs, "What do you think of this?" She said, "I really like it." And she's got family not far from here. And we'd been back for one Christmas and really thought it was sort of liked the Christmas, and perhaps we got caught up in the whole romance of it a little bit. And she said, "Well, we can't afford it." And I took my hand away and said, "I think we can." So that's how we ended up in France. Oh. And we had no idea about the area. We came and looked at the house. It was being advertised privately, I think. We then looked at a couple of houses in the area just to make sure we weren't being mad. We stayed with Annie and Georgina, who you know, and they just showed us around the area, and we just moved the kids. I think we completed in September, and they started in September.
Wow, that quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible story as to how you got here. Yeah. Most people don't have those, but there are people around here that seem to be running from something or trying to find a new path.
Well, you come here because it's cheap.
Yeah. Sunshine.
Yeah. And then you don't really know why you're here. I found in France, I think most people I've met seem to have there are some, but most of them are.
They actually are working in the background. They have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing I found when we first moved here, and you may have found the same, is that you gravitate towards people who speak the same language.
Yeah, I've talked about this one.
And you end up with a bunch of people that you realize after a number of months, why the hell am I even speaking to them? I have nothing in common whatsoever.
Yeah.
I remember saying to somebody once, you don't go into a pub in the UK, just wander around, just talking.
Well, you speak English.
Yeah, so I'll talk to you. And you end up talking to people thinking, but you end up meeting people and you think they're your friends. But I think even if you try, like all these things, because you are, you're a visitor in someone else's country.
Yeah.
What we are immigrants.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to break that down. Dealing with French people could be hard. I think some of them, especially this area, I think there is still a slight racist element, I think, amongst some of them.
Magnifying kind of environment if you're not careful.
Well, also I find the thing I find here that I've found and I'm find more and more difficult. I mean, we're nearly coming up to 18 years or whatever it is being here, is that the winter.
Hard.
They just shut this, 4:30. Well, one restaurant's shut, or they're only open for, an hour and a half.
Yeah.
In the evening, and then they shut. But the French people just close their shutters.
Yeah.
And you just don't see anybody.
Yeah. So you have a radio show.
Yeah.
Every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
Groovy Soul
on a Brooklyn station, because the wonders of the internet means that you can sit in France. It goes up in the air and comes down the other side and ends up in Brooklyn, and then it goes around the world.
And so the company that it's a non-profit, right? That runs
it's a non-profit organisation run by a guy called Curtis Powers. Called The Face Radio, on the basis that there's no sponsorship. It's all based on whether people contribute. The only thing about it is DJs have to pay to be on, which I find bizarre. It's not a lot, but it's like a subscription service to be on, because that's the only way it's funded.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would have thought of that if you're offering your time to a non-profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of radio stations now that, there are hundreds of internet stations, and a lot of them I've been asked to work on, a lot of them want subscriptions. Some don't, but then I think they have some sort of backing. I think there's a couple I've been approached by. They've got a couple of sponsors. I mean, I know on Mixcloud my downloads are good, and my barometer on that is I can see where I am in the Mixcloud top 100 charts around the world. So I file under soul, funk, ska, blues, and northern soul. Soul is very hard to break into the top 100, as you can imagine, because there's a lot of soul shows. I think the best I've ever done is 69th in the world. Funk, I've got to in the top 20s. Ska, for some bizarre reason, I'm always in the top 10, but I only ever play about 3 ska tracks every 2 hours. So there's obviously some ska fans who obviously just listen on, because I think what you do with Mixcloud is you look up the genre you like, and then it just lists programs that have that under that genre. Yeah. So for some reason, there are some ska fans who only listen to me, but only ever get 3 tracks in 2 hours. If you listen to radio in the UK now, there's a playlist. Radio 2, where I used to work at, Radio 1 I worked at. There's a playlist, and there's an A list. They call it an A list, a B list, and a C list, and then what you think are called a basket list. And the A list is a guaranteed number of plays per day, per week,
which each song on that list has to have, according to...
Yeah, so there'll be... in the old days, it would have been a music programmer, but now there's obviously a computer that does it. So for your daytime shows, there will be one of those A-lists, probably 2 or 3 an hour, across to, say, a 3-hour breakfast show. And then obviously it will just rotate itself. So you're guaranteed. So record companies, obviously, in the day when I was there, we used to have people called pluggers, who were people who came along. When I was at Radio 1, I had like a 20-minute appointment with each plugger, because I was producing a daytime show. So they're desperate to try and get you to like that record. You then go to a playlist meeting where you present the ones that you think are favourite that will work for the station.
Yeah.
And then everybody votes for them. And then they either get put on the A list, B list, C list. C list, not many plays.
Yeah.
And I think now they do a sort of basket list, which I think is like a list of stuff that if the DJ fancies paying one. Yeah. So if the DJ likes it, you might get more plays than the C list.
Yeah.
But if they don't like it, it may never get played at all.
And that's why you hear every time you turn on the radio, you got songs
stuck in your head and you know the lyrics, I guess. Yeah. Wow. So how did you get into DJing?
Well, I got into radio first, I suppose. In my day, trying to get into media was hard. I mean, it's even harder now. But I tried everything. I was working for a guy who was a manager of some bands, and it was funded by a solicitor who was desperate to be in the music business. He just put money behind it, because I think he quite liked turning up at gigs and thought he was going to end up being some sort of media mogul. And I used to sit in this office and help this guy, and I ended up living in his house with this guy Martin. And then he left, and he told me he was leaving, and I helped him move out the office. But he said, "Don't say anything. Just turn up tomorrow morning and just pretend you knew nothing about it." So I turned up and said, "Oh, Martin's disappeared," and the guy said, "Oh well, can you carry on running it?" And I said, "Yeah, all right," because he was paying me.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing, really. I used to listen to, it's still going, I think it's called BBC London now, but it was called Greater London Radio at the time, which was a BBC station. And there was a woman on there called Emma Freud, who was a presenter. She's now the partner of Rich Curtis, who wrote, Love Actually and all those things. She comes from the Clement Freud dynasty, or wherever, Clement Freud and Sigmund Freud. Yeah. And she used to do a show, and she used to have a competition on it. And I used to ring up and enter this competition, and all you won was a GLR paper cup signed by her.
Oh, okay.
And her producer was Chris Evans, who I didn't know was Chris. Didn't know Chris Evans at the time. Didn't even know, because obviously they don't mention the producers. And I used to ring up quite a lot, to the point where she knew who I was.
That's like, "Hi, Andy."
Because she would answer the phone on the switchboard. because it was just her and one other person. So I then started changing my name to get on.
Really?
And I started putting like...
characters.
Doing voices.
Well, I put like a handkerchief over my mouth once. So because she said, "Oh, who's calling?" And I remember I said I was Fred. And she said, "Oh, where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Finchley." And she said, "What do you do?" And I'm a fireman. She said, "Oh, you're Fred the fireman from Finchley." And I went through this whole competition, and then I didn't win. And she came on, played a record, and she came onto this, the talkbacky thing to talk to me off air, and said, "Sorry, Fred, you haven't won." And I said, it's me. And I said, "Can I take you to lunch?" Now I must have been like the weirdest sounding stalker.
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, all right." And I basically went to GLR's offices after she finished, and I went for a picnic with her and Chris Evans. And he said to me, "Oh, I'm starting doing my own show," which was an evening show called The Greenhouse, which I think was from 7 till 9. And he said, "I just need people to answer my phones." And I said, "I'll do it."
Wow.
And I became Handy Andy, the phone answerer. And my job was, to begin with, because GLR was a station that was sort of middle of the road, so they would play Eagles and Beatles and stuff like that. But then at 7 o'clock it shifted. So this would have been 1986 or 7. So it shifted playing pop music. So we were playing, Kylie, Jason Donovan stuff. So it absolutely, it was a complete shift from what they were playing at daytime. And Chris obviously had come from Manchester, from Piccadilly, had come from that sort of slightly zoo format type idea of radio. And so my job was to basically make it sound as if the phone room was really busy. And it wasn't. So he would call me in the phone room, and I had to answer the phone and he would say, "Is it busy?" I go, he said, "It isn't." I go, "It is, it isn't, it is." And I had to come up with something at the end. And he'd say, "And has anyone called?" And I'd say, "Oh yeah, Lionel Richie's called." And he would say, "He hasn't, he has, he hasn't, he has." And then he'd say, "What did he say?" And I said, "He just said hello." And then he put the phone down, and it was just, Stevie Wonder was on the phone. "What did he say?" Oh, I said, "He just called to say he loved me." And then I had to do something that was as crappy as that.
Yeah.
But the whole point was to generate sort of a feeling that it was you're
being listened to. Yeah.
And then I basically drifted into more doing. We created 2 characters called Filey Flea and Fergie Flea, and Filey Flea gave information as in a filofax, and Fergie Flea was his annoying little brother. But we recorded it. This is how old it is. We're on reel-to-reel tape. So we'd record it at normal speed, and then he would slightly use an oscillating thing to speed it up. So we sounded like annoying little fleas.
Yeah.
So it would be pop information about Kylie or Jason or whoever at the time. And so I started doing that. And then I basically learned how to use a radio car. So in those days they had like news cars that would go out with a great last.
Oh, yeah.
And I was sent out to basically do anything, sometimes we had bands, bands of the day that were new. I would take them in the car to someone's house, and just turn up with this pop band, and I'd have a microphone, and he'd go to me live. I did a thing with him once where I would drive to somewhere in a main street in London that had a thoroughfare of cars going through, and people had to honk if they were horny. So he would go to me live, and then you just see, just anything that we could do. And then what happened then is we then shifted to Saturday mornings.
Right.
And Chris married somebody called Carol McGiffin, who's, if you know Loose Women.
Yeah.
I was there.
No, they were married.
Yeah, well, they didn't last very long.
I'm not surprised.
I was their best man at the wedding. And we did a thing called Around at Chris's and His Missus. And I was basically the sort of put-upon sidekick who I had to come up with competition ideas. I think he used to throw a lot of things at me. And it was just basically, it was a Saturday morning, and we had a live audience who came in. And it was a tiny studio. And people used to, it became so popular, people were queuing around the block to get in. And we had people, we broke every sort of fire regulation going.
Yeah.
A room that was probably, I don't know, 20 square meters. Sometimes I had like 100 people in it. It was just people. I remember sitting there, I had my microphone and I had people's heads, people kneeling down.
Oh my God.
It was just packed with creepy.
Creepy.
So yeah, that became, I don't know how many years I did that for, but yeah.
You've probably been in the trenches then. Like you feel it when people say like, oh no, I worked my way up.
So yeah, I mean, I think
Worked your way out.
Yeah, and I think you do have to, I tried always to get in. I mean, I remember I tried, and I ended up eventually working with Jonathan Ross, but to get in.
It's like becoming a struggling actor, isn't it? Yeah. You know, where they will have to do things that they don't want to do, or, be a bit creative with it to get that one shot, isn't it? Because sometimes that one shot is enough to get you through the door. But
I always remembered it because I ended up producing television programs, and I remember interviewing people for jobs for programs that I was producing. Just often gave people that jobs that I just found slightly
a bit odd
and different.
A bit character. Yeah.
There was a guy that I interviewed once, and he's now, I think he ended up becoming like head of comedy at Radio 4, but I gave him a job as a researcher on a TV show I was doing. And he turned up in the most shocking corduroy brown suit that was soaking wet because he got caught in the rain. And I remember I was sat down, we were looking at the paper, and he'd been set in and sat on this sofa. And I remember looking up, and this guy had like really big glasses and this sort of wet suit, and it was a bit odd looking. I went, oh my God, and a sort of over the top reaction. And then there was something about him.
Yeah.
And, he left, and I said, we should definitely employ him. And we rang him up to offer him the job, and he was so shocked. He went, oh my God, and then just put the phone down. And then rang back and said, I'm really sorry about that, but I was cooking a chicken Kiev. And then, but again, it was something about him that,
just that magic, that eccentricity, that
And I think that's what, it is hard, and it's obviously getting harder.
I don't know. My cousin's a DJ on Capital FM, but she started off in a local radio station where I used to live in England, in the Flying Eye, talk about the traffic.
Yeah.
And she won that on a competition, started off doing that, and then progressed into becoming a presenter locally, and then went to Capital FM. I think she's still doing it now. I don't know.
What was funny about Capital was it said they were at the Capital Towers.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at over London. It wasn't. It was one floor up in a building in Euston. It had no windows, but I was
Yeah, but everybody's journey's different. And, tidbits like that you could give could change somebody's life. I know it sounds a bit dramatic, but it really can.
Chris said one week, let's try and see if we can get Jonathan Ross to come to the studio this morning. So he sent me out in the car. He cut to me live, and I had parked quite away from his house. So I had to run down the street with this microphone. So I had the cable, and I remember knocking on his door, and I'm live, and I said, Jonathan Ross, Handy Andy, or whatever it was from Chris Evans' show. And I said, will you come back to the studio? And thinking he'd say no. He went, all right then. And he got in the car with me, and I took him to the studio.
Yeah.
And then, so when Radio 2, Jonathan was managed by a guy called Addison Cresswell. So he said to Radio 2, want Jonathan to do this. Will you go and meet him? And I said, well, I do know him. I've met him a few times before. And we just had this meeting, and he said, well, should we just go for it? And that's how the Radio 2 thing started.
So.
Yeah, that one connection, sometimes, isn't it, is what it takes.
I ended up being on his first 10 TV shows, the BBC One version, not the ITV now. Friday Night with Jonathan Ross. I was on there to begin with. And they said, for the TV, what we want to do is the same thing. Andy's just sort of, sidekick. And then he'll go and present some sort of competition with the audience. And the pilot we did for BBC, and it was for BBC Two, and it was going to be like, I think 10 o'clock on one night of the week. So slightly more edgy. BBC One then said, no, we like it, but we want it to be BBC One at 9 o'clock on a Friday. And then they sort of basically toned down. They said, we don't want the competitions. We like the room thing, but we want to be able to hear them talk. And we went, I went with that.
That's defeating the object.
Yeah.
And then there was a whole conversation where someone, again, this was being made through Jonathan's manager's TV company. And the conversation was, do you want to produce it, or do you want to be on as a sidekick? And I just thought, well, and I remember I had an agent at the time who secured me such a great deal financially. I just went, I'll be on then. But I didn't really, I was sort of lost because they didn't really know what to do with me. I used to sit on a chair next to him. So there's a desk here, he's there. I'm at the end of the desk on a chair. And we would talk to each other. And then when you bring a guest on,
You have to get up and go
I
away.
disappeared, and I ended up being that sort of shot behind a camera, sort of waving a script, a bit like in...
Yeah.
So you were a bit of everything there.
And then I'd reappear again.
Yep.
But I did that for the first 5 or 6, and they said, well, this is a bit weird because there's an empty chair, and then suddenly you just see you appear.
Yeah.
So they changed it and put a sofa in, and I would sit at the end of the sofa. So they would bring a guest on, and I would just slide down the sofa.
Yeah.
And I had an earpiece, and I could remember the producer going, Andy, your leg's in shot, move your leg. Because obviously if there's an edit...
Yeah.
So I had to sort of slightly get out of the way. He would sort of incorporate me in the interview sometimes. Other times I just sat there, and I became a bit like a sort of laughing, chimpy cutaway, like a monkey. So whenever they needed a cutaway, there's a bloke going, no. I think I did about 10... I think I made 10 or 12 shows of the first season. And I remember the last one, the controller radio... the controller of BBC One was in the audience. And I remember thinking, I really got to try and deliver here on... And they basically said afterwards, you're not on anymore. It was a bit weird. And then I said, oh, well, I'll go back to producing it. And they said, oh, no, you can't do that either.
Yeah.
So I literally was taken off it.
Wow.
So it was very odd, but,
Yeah, that's a very hard place to be, because if you don't feel like you're excelling, but your skills aren't being utilised and you're not given the platform, you know what I mean? It's a very...
Well, I remember eventually talking to, and the producer I knew very well, and I remember calling her to my dressing room once, and I said, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I said, I've been sat here for 4 hours. Nobody has bothered to check how I am. No one's come and told me anything. All I do is I sit and wait, and then you just call me down and say, well, we're recording.
Yeah.
No one's told me anything at all.
Yeah.
And he had a team of writers, three or four of them would write for him, who were sitting with him.
Yeah.
They would never. And I said, why can't someone come and give me a line to use?
Yeah.
Well, why can't I sit in with them while they're doing the writing so I at least know what's going on? Yeah. That's a shame.
Yeah.
But that's how, I mean, in a huge way, that is how he got famous and you moved to France, right? Like, that, it's how I did that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but
You know what I
gone
mean?
off the point a bit, aren't we? We're talking about...
No, it's really, really interesting. I've never met you before. So what's your plans next then? So you're moving from the house that you now live in, and where are you off to?
Spain again.
Oh, you're going back to Spain to live?
Yeah.
What's the drawback there? I mean, obviously, having been here for so long, you'd done some time there. Is it the weather?
No, well, a bit of the weather, I think. It's the social life. Where we bought, it's the Spanish love being out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very...
And
the difference.
Well, I just said about, the winter, when I bought the house in Spain, I looked at it on the 3rd of January, and everywhere was open. Even beach bars were open.
Wow.
Nothing, they don't shut. It's a working town. There's 25,000 people. It obviously swells in the summer. It's not that well known, and although it's been listed recently in one of these New York Times things as one of the places to retire to in the world, which annoyed the hell out of me. But everything's open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the house is right in the centre of the town. You could walk everywhere. So there's none of this driving thing. I just quite like the idea of the buzz again of people.
I totally get that. I've got quite a few friends actually that are looking at Tenerife or Spain, that are retired in their 70s, because they are very social people, and they go out every Friday and every Saturday religiously, and they're finding it very difficult knowing it's coming to the winter season now, that their regular places are going to start closing again. And
well, there's a massive community of people here as well that work all season and then go to Spain.
Yeah.
We were in Spain a couple of weeks ago, and there are people that go and spend, their 3 months.
Yeah, so maybe that's the key
down there,
mixing it up a bit.
And that is the main reason. That's the main draw, is like you want to go out to bars and restaurants, and there's just nothing here.
The other thing is the cost of living now. Yeah. France is becoming, it's still not as expensive as the UK, but it's become more expensive.
Yeah,
the electricity and heating and all.
And we've always thought that Spain was a third cheaper, and I think it still is. I mean, it's still getting, it's getting expensive like everything, but it's not. It is cheaper than living in France.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be a draw, but obviously as you get older and you've got, if you want to retire or whatever you want to do, finances become a bit of an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's thinking for the future.
Yeah. So you're going to carry on doing the radio show from Spain?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've done nearly 7 years now of it. I mean, I think this week is my 366 show.
Wow, it's incredible.
It's volunteer, as we said. I don't get paid for it. I do it because I love doing it. But I'm going to take a bit of a break whilst we go to Spain this time. And they'll hold it open for me, I think. You know, there's a bloke that literally, as I start at 6 o'clock on a Sunday, there's a bloke in Utah and he's there. Mike Barker, his name is, and he pops up every...
Hi, Mike.
I know Mike. He pops up. There's a guy called Phil Colby who messages me in, separately now on just WhatsApp about records.
But that's so cool because that takes me back to when you were talking at the start about you phoning that station and you're Fred the firefighter from Finley to win a competition, and it's like a full circle. You're in the position now where people are phoning to you about your skill and your knowledge, and I think music should be about sharing that feeling, something that you've bottled that you can pass to somebody else and make them feel incredible too.
He DJ'd that party we went to at Valou's. He was DJing after the girls played.
Okay, yeah. You know what? When I first met, I was like, I know I've seen your face before, and I couldn't place that was.
You couldn't recognize the hair. He's got great hair.
You have got great hair.
Thank you.
But it was lovely to meet you.
Yeah.
But I can't believe I didn't connect the two when you were DJing. That it was you when you turned up, was it? Now I know it.
Oh, she remembers.
Now I know it. Yeah.
Thank you for coming, Andy.
No problem.
And thank you for watching and listening.
Thank you.
And enjoying this episode of Pardon Your French podcast, sponsored by Coppercock Distillery. And we'll see you next week. Bye. Bye.